How to Trade Forex Lecture 13. This is the second of 2 parts on Jeff's lines. And in this part we're going to look at where the lines came from, how they originated, what they're based on. And they came from, in short, observation. That's the short answer. The long answer is, it's human nature which tends to make traders set limit orders at particular distances away from the opening price. We have a really good example here of groupthink and self-fulfilling prophecies kicking in. So what I'm basically doing is reflecting the human trader's tendency to actually put limit orders in at or around full numbers away from the opening price of the day. We can take that a bit further. For years, we've tracked these daily fluctuations in the pound-dollar price as it moves above or below its opening value. And here is a typical year's findings. So what we're looking at is a chart which has a zero line along the centre. That alters every day to reflect the opening price of whatever day we're on. We've got a whole year's figures here. The lines that then straddle that show the amount of movement on each and every day above and below the opening price. And if we draw a line along there at 100, either 100 plus or 100 minus, we can see how many days actually went higher than or lower than 100 pips away from the origin. We can also see how very few days went more than 200 pips above or below the origin of the day. From that, we can actually calculate the likelihood that the movement on any particular day will be beyond one of our Jeff's lines. And the analysis of that gives us this. So what we're saying is, on 70% of trading days, the price tends to move by 75 or fewer pips in one direction. That could be up or down. So on 7 out of 10 days, we only expect the price to move to the 75 pip line. On 20% of the days, the price tends to move between 75 and 100 pips in one direction. So again, there's less likelihood that we're going to get a move that's 75 to 100, but we're looking for it, we're checking. So therefore, we want to actually see whether the price is bouncing off the 75 line or passing through it. And if it passes through it, there's then a 90% chance, which is 70% plus 20%, that it's going to bounce off 100. And there's only a 10% chance that it'll go further than 100. But we can do the same again. We can wait and watch and be patient and see if the price is bouncing off 100, which is highly likely, or whether it's going to continue through and go down to 150. Same exercise again at the 150 line, but movements beyond that are very, very rare. Only 4 days a year on average. So there is a 70% chance that the plus or minus 75 line, 75 pip line, will be the pivot point. That doesn't take into account the fact that we get some pivoting at the whole number price points. There's also a 20% chance that the price will be changing direction at plus or minus 100, and that also then is a major pivot point. And a 10% chance that it will be changing direction at the plus or minus 150 line. There's a very tiny chance within that 10% that will go on beyond to 200 or some other figure. We could in fact put lines in plus and minus 200, but it's so rare I simply haven't chosen to do it. There are normally just a handful of occasions, so we're not going to put that line in unless I get a lot of people asking me to do so. So what about the purple line at plus and minus 50? Well, it does act as a pivot point in its own right, and it regularly comes into play as a pivot point. However, I tend to use it much more as confirmation of the direction that the price is moving in. You're welcome to use it either way. The plus and minus 50 purple line is different. It acts as a trigger, and until the price closes beyond it, we don't take the price direction for the day to have been established. Even after this, although unlikely, the day could still see a direction reversal. So, the lines are definitely not 100% guaranteed. We're looking at a situation where we're weighing up the probabilities and looking at the averages and looking at the number of exceptions to those cases. And they give us a very good indication of what may happen on most occasions. In periods of very low volatility, which are normally periods also of very low volume, that's when the plus and minus 50 line can be particularly strong as a trigger. Check out the volumes and see what they're like compared to previously recent days, and you may then choose to put greater emphasis on the plus and minus 50 as a trigger point. Therefore, using these lines, we have a good clue as to which line will be the pivot, but no certainty, and we must act accordingly. In addition, note that this is not always an exact science. Now I'm repeating this for emphasis, and that being in the proximity of a support or resistance line is often enough to trigger the response. So let's just go back over that again. What I'm actually saying is, firstly, that the lines are not perfect, they don't always work every day, but I'm also saying that even when they are working and working very, very well, you can't sort of say, okay, it's hit the 75 mark, therefore, I take whatever action it might be. We've got to give it a little leeway. So if we're actually trading live rather than using limit orders, then we might look at an area of 2, 3, 4, 5 pips maximum either side of Jeff's lines, and accept that if we're in those areas, we may well get a reversal. And that could be whether the line is, whether the price is a couple of pips short of hitting the line, or whether it's a couple of pips over the line. So you need to take that into account. The idea is to enter a trade either once the plus or minus 50 line has been breached, or once the price has reversed at a pivot line. So if we're going with the direction of travel, we're saying, yes, okay, we've breached the 50, we're going to continue, the price will be moving either up or down, and we'll look at the possibility of placing buy or sell trades accordingly. Or we're looking for the price to get into a reversal, so it's been falling and we're going to put a buy in for it going back up, or it's been rising and we're going to put a sell trade in to catch the profit as it comes down. The exit is also signalled by the pivot point taking effect. So, think about that carefully. What I'm actually saying here is, Jeff's lines and pivot points are good for not only deciding when to enter a trade or helping us to make the decision as to when to enter a trade, they're also good for helping us to make the decision of when to leave the trade. So if you've got a buy on and the price is moving up and it's approaching a major pivot line, then there's a fair chance that the direction may change and it could be a good place to exit. Using a limit order, it's possible to set and to leave such trades alone for a while at least. We can also use a trailing stop to prevent an exit at the minimum profit level. So we can give the platform a little bit of trust. You can't go away and hold it for a fortnight and just leave it, but you can certainly check it a couple of times of the day, or even once or twice in the day if you've got limit orders in place. Be particularly careful of doing that if there's a major news event coming up that could affect it. And I'm talking about scheduled news. Obviously, we don't know in advance about unscheduled news. And in a later module, we'll be covering in detail the effects of news. So take that into account before you rely on leaving limit orders in place. So in this example, the purple minus 50 line was breached, and the sell trade could have been exited at 75, minus 75, which is absolutely fine. However, the setting a trailing stop to kick in at minus 75, with the profit only being taken on a change of direction of 15 pips, would have seen the trade still in progress at this point. So instead of taking profit at the minus 75 line, we would have been able to take profit at the minus 100 line, and even to put a trailing stop in place to capture most of that increase in profit, whatever had happened. The daily redrawing of the plus and minus 50, 75, 100 and 150 lines can be automated on the MT4 trading platform through the purchase of our unique expert indicator via the online shop or directly from the MT4 on-screen market. However, for most people who are watching this and have taken the course through the Forex Trader magazine website, then you don't need to go and purchase anything. If you look in the resource section of the training program, you'll find that the indicators for both Jeff's lines and also later for the rule of thirds are there for you to download. And I'm now going to show you a short video which explains how to download and install these indicators. And this will apply equally to the Jeff's lines or the rule of thirds. I now want to demonstrate how to install indicators such as Jeff's lines and Jeff's rule of thirds. So basically that will work for any indicator, but I'm using these two that I use all the time as an example. So we go first of all and open the trading platform MT4, and there it is. And as you can see, it's got the Bollinger Bands in and the colour scheme that we previously installed. Next, I want to go up to the top left-hand corner to the toolbar to File. And if I left-hand click on that, I get a submenu. And the next area I want is Open Data Folder. Now I simply left-click on that. It reopens into a new window. And the next file I'm looking for is this one, MQL4. And if I click on that, left-hand click, double that it, then I come to indicators, or various ones, but the one I'm looking for is indicators. So if I use the left-hand mouse button to double-click on that, it opens up. And here we've got lots of different indicators already in place. So I'd like to minimize the background just so that I can see my desktop for the moment. And then for each of the two indicators, which I've simply put onto my desktop, so I've downloaded them, moved them to the desktop. If you have trouble with that, contact me. And for each, I'm going to simply put the cursor over them, right-hand click, and then use the left-hand click button to copy. I would copy rather than cut at this stage. Move the cursor across to anywhere within this central area, right-hand click, and then left-hand click on paste. And there it is. We can see that Jeff's lines have now appeared in that list. Go and do the same thing again, cursor over Jeff's thirds, right-hand click to get the submenu, left-hand click to copy, move the cursor back to the main area, right-hand click, and then left-hand click on paste. They're now both in position. So we can close this window and reopen the main trading area. But this needs to refresh, so what we have to do is to close it all together and then reopen it. And here it comes. Okay, so now across to the left-hand side, we can see various headings, and the one that we're looking for is indicators. And to the left of that is a little plus sign. If we left-hand click on that plus sign, we get a list of all the different indicators that we could install on this trading platform. And if we scroll down, they're alphabetical, we can see we now have Jeff's lines and Jeff's thirds in position. So for each of them, we simply hold the cursor over them, left-hand click, and drag the cursor to the middle of the main screen. Just then release it. You're given options here. You could actually, for example, change the colour scheme if you wish, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it as it is, and I'm going to press OK. There it is. So Jeff's lines are now in position. If I'd had a different colour background, I may, for example, chosen to change the colour scheme. I'm now going to go across and do exactly the same again with Jeff's thirds. I move the cursor over, I left-hand click, that highlights it and allows me to hold the mouse button down and drag the indicator to the center of the screen, simply release. Again, we've got options including the colors and so on, but I'm going to leave them unchanged and press on OK. And there we have it. We now have the indicators in place, both Jeff's lines and the rule of thirds, and the Bollinger Bands. And every time we reopen this screen, the trading platform, they'll be in place. So we're good to go. While it's possible to trade using only Jeff's lines, it is actually far more powerful to combine them with other tools and indicators. You've already seen one of the tools I'm referring to, and that was the Bollinger Bands.